it's a question of justice, it's a question of fairness.
Pour nous, c'était un droit fondamental.
You just realize that, yes, this is something that's really important.
Quand on a un enfant, on n'est pas sur le chômage. Au contraire, il y a beaucoup de travail.
It was just wrong that women lost money when they went off work to have children.
We have to, as a society, come to a place where we recognize the value that of mothers and fathers.
Before paid maternity leave, if you were in a marriage situation, it was regarded that you had to leave your job. Morally, you should leave your job and look after your children. Paid maternity leave, or even any kind of maternity leave, wasn't a concept which was at all part of the culture in the 60s. It's something that people began to struggle for in that period of time.
Et on part de 60-70. C'est vraiment là où on voit des orientations qui sont prises en congrès, dans des mémoires. C'était une société complètement différente aussi. Les femmes travaillaient moins, elles étaient plus à la maison.
Going back to the 60s, Royal Commissions on women in the public service and studies were saying the government should become a model employer. And giving us paid maternity leave is one of the ways they should become a model employer.
When the commission went across the country in the late 60s, interviewing women, it was at that point that women's movement began to focus on issues of working women.
When I had my children, I had to quit my job. You then had your child and stayed home for as long as you could, economically speaking, and then looked for other employment.
Il y en a qui l'ont perdu leur emploi à cause de ça. Faut pas se leurrer, là. Aussitôt que ça commençait à apparaître, on s'en débarrassait, puis on disait, bon, parce que c'était mal vu de porter un enfant, c'était aussi pire que ça.
The NDP was always very much on side in terms of helping women to move forward and advocating policies on their behalf.
A lot of people just can't take it because they can't have that low of an income level.
And often you look in the literature, the research literature, it doesn't get connected, the important role that unions played in putting those family leaves in place.
Quand on parle de Front commun, on parle d'une solidarité entre les grandes centrales syndicales de l'époque. Et à chaque négociation du secteur public, on s'entend sur des priorités. Et on voulait, à cette époque-là, faire une percée significative au Québec pour qu'on puisse améliorer les dispositions de l'assurance chômage de l'époque. Et évidemment, il y a eu des manifs, c'était une époque où ça bougeait beaucoup au Québec, il y avait beaucoup de confrontations, mais c'était une priorité de négociation, il ne faut pas oublier ça. Et quand on a une priorité dans la négo, ça devenait un incontournable.
C'était un consensus des grands joueurs qui s'est dit on va tous frapper sur le même clou en même temps. Puis à partir du moment où le secteur public arrivait à une percée, c'est sûr qu'à un moment donné, ça donne des arguments au secteur privé. Tu sais, la lutte, c'est de même, c'est que tout le monde, on dit, c'était ça, tout le monde frappait à la même place. C'était des priorités de négociation, comme Carole le dit. On fait des choix, ça a été les choix de la société à l'époque.
It was really an exciting time. Women were beginning to get voices in unions. The women's movement was really alive and vibrant. We were very concerned about sort of the direction of the labor movement, that it was still had a very Cold War mentality, that it wasn't embracing issues like women's issues and progressive ideas.
There was still men in the post office in those days saying, you shouldn't be here, you're taking a job from a man who provides for a family. You know, never mind I was a single parent.
I think Jean-Claude Perrault understood that the young progressive women in the union were a positive force for change. I think he understood that really well, and I think that he understood that he had embraced it, even though he knew that sometimes we made him profoundly uncomfortable.
Je me souviens encore quand les gens téléphonaient, Jean-Claude, est-ce qu'on est en grève réellement seulement sur le congé de maternité payé? Et ma réponse était toujours non, il y a d'autres questions, mais on ne tournera pas avant de l'avoir. Et là, les gens disaient, ah, OK, on a compris.
It was a hard struggle. There was all this hysteria about, oh, everybody's going to get pregnant. It's going to, and they're going to get pregnant all the time, right? As if, give us a year off and women will have multiple children. It was just that kind of absurdity.
Bargaining isn't only about cost, bargaining is about ideology. And Canada posts two arguments, way too expensive and we shouldn't be providing this, it's the role of the government.
Ils nous offraient des augmentations de salaire assez substantielles, puis ils ne voulaient pas nous donner quelque chose qui coûtait moins de 2 sous de l'heure. Alors, une fois que les journalistes, les médias ont compris ça, on a dit, mais c'est quoi le problème?
Everyday members became more committed. It was amazing. I mean, it really was amazing.
We couldn't win on our own. By the end of that strike, we had women's groups on the picket line. We had a strong support.
La grève n'était pas le sujet discuté dans l'opinion publique. C'était le congé de maternité qui était discuté. Et ça a été la première fois, à mon avis, qu'on avait un débat public sur une question de négociation et non pas sur la grève. D'ailleurs, c'est encore là aujourd'hui. On entend encore les gens dire, parler du congé de maternité qui est possible d'être cherché. Il y a toujours une certaine fierté.
October the 3rd, 1980, an historical day for Canadian labour, for the Public Service Alliance of Canada, and most of all, for all clerks.
De vouloir avoir des congés maternité, les membres en général le voulaient, mais la direction du temps, haute direction, je devrais dire, du syndicat, l'Alliance de la fonction publique, se refusait à négocier ou à accepter qu'on devait apporter des modifications.
The members just ran past the leadership. I will never be cynical about the possibility of people rising up.
You look at the cost of living today, you look at the number of single mothers who are in the CR groups. I believe 77% are women in the CR group. I mean, it's just not fair.
Being my first union workplace and then my very first ever strike, I don't even think that I had seen a strike other than perhaps on TV. And then to be out picketing, it was exciting.
more than 15,000 clerks and supporters ranged city blocks and marched through the downtown area for 3 hours. The demonstration was so large, so impressive, that it caused everyone to take notice. By Wednesday, a tentative agreement had been reached, and it was a package to be presented for a vote by the members.
22,448, or 71.2%, voted in favor of the tentative agreement.
Of course, not everyone was completely satisfied. There are still many issues to carry on to the next session.
The only thing that keeps us all pushing onward, all of us, the only thing that keeps us going is the solidarity and absolute determination shown by our CR members from coast to coast.
The demand didn't get dropped from the table the next round, and of course the leadership of the PSEC had somewhat changed. What happens for all of us when we're on a picket line is we learn about the struggle and what's going on and what are the demands, and so that demand for paid maternity leave then became part of the consciousness of many members.
When you come together as a collective and you work together, you're that much more powerful. The impact in and of itself was a huge win because you really could take the time off to have your children and not have to quit your job. What a novel concept. And so from my perspective, and I think from the union's perspective, it was a huge one. It was a huge gain for working women.
The fact that CUPW had obtained it from Canada Post was an important step.
I think very often the private sector employers thought they should be somewhat immune from some of the changes that took place at public sector collective agreements. Profit was their main motive for operating, and so in that vein they could see that any additional benefit that was given to their employees would be potentially less profits for them.
It was quite an oppressive work environment for the telephone operator, and we had very few rights in our collective agreement at the time. I think they recognized, being an employer of a large group of women, they had two choices: either be behind the parade or get with the parade, and that being behind the parade might have some negative consequences.
I think there was a belief through the employer that women worked and it was a second income and it was for spending money. You know, the operators came together saying, no, we're fighting for a living income, not just to have spending money.
For people who have been getting nothing, they thought it was pretty darn good. We didn't get the things that we got because we were so eloquent in our arguments about why it was a good idea. We got it because we mobilized people and got them to say, I'm going to show solidarity with these people. We're going to stick together.
Certainly Bell Canada was stirring up a lot of dissension amongst federal employers. They were all concerned that since Bell Canada was the first private sector employer to introduce this supplemental unemployment benefit plan for those on maternity leave, there would be enormous pressure on them to do the same.
Oftentimes the things that we do in the labor movement are the breakthrough, and then it spreads through contracts, and then it went farther than that because then people who don't have the benefit of being part of a union started to say, well, wait a minute, why isn't that part of either human rights legislation or labor standards?
Je pense qu'il est important de comprendre que le congé de maternité payé n'est pas la seule question quand on parle de congés parentaux. Mais dans le congé de maternité payé, il est évident que si tu n'as pas ça, le reste n'est pas aussi important.
When anybody was thinking about having a child, it was only ever thought that it was the women who were going to be off work, both birthing a child and then starting to raise them. But subsequently what we've seen is the introduction of parental leave, which started off in 1984 as just a 10-week period of time that could have been taken by either men or women.
There's far greater consciousness now that by young men that they want to play a full parenting role, and I think it's been an interaction that there's both these demands then for greater leaves.
It was in 1990 that this parental leave was introduced if you were adopting a child.
Well, the complaint that was filed was the federal government as an employer discriminated against its gay and lesbian employees who were not able to put their same-sex spousal partners on the benefits plan. There were other organizations, big organizations under federal jurisdiction, that already at that point provided same-sex spousal benefits. Well, there's certainly a liberation in being out and, doing what you can to overcome discrimination that you face.
One of the provisions that I was very proud that we were able to improve on within the Public Service Alliance of Canada was a care and nurturing leave, and we made it broad purposely so that it could cover not only your children, but if you had to deal with elder care.
Les congés de compassion qui sont dans l'assurance-emploi, il y a eu des discussions au regroupement sur l'assurance parentale pour qu'on puisse faire la même chose qu'on a fait pour les congés de maternité, rapatrier les sommes d'argent du Québec pour qu'on puisse avoir des congés de compassion.
Custom adoption is that Aboriginal children will be adopted by Aboriginal parents. And what they will do within this whole adoption process is that their biological parents will be involved with them, as will other family members. So it's really about a wholesome family.
What we're finding is that the 15 weeks of sick benefits to which people are entitled under employment insurance at the present time is really not adequate for many people who have illnesses that may require long treatment.
Mais c'est pas terminé, on a encore du travail à faire, des défis à relever.
In 2004, we negotiated a first collective agreement for our 7,000 rural and suburban mail carriers. 66 to 70% of them are women. The binding arbitrator came down and gave the women RSMC's paid maternity leave starting late October 2011. And at our convention, they had a meeting of RSMCs. One of the women was pregnant and she was crying because she was so happy.
We've done a reasonable job, I think, on continuing the fight, because it's not one in every workplace, but continuing the fight for paid maternity leaves, for top-ups for unemployment insurance.
We need to protect the rights we have and continue to try and move forward the rights for women and for families. There's lots left to do in terms of employment equity, pay equity, child care. These are issues that need attention.
Ces enfants-là, ça va être vos futurs travailleurs. Pensez-y, là. On est prêt à faire n'importe quoi, puis on n'est pas prêt à soutenir ça. Fait que c'est un changement de mentalité.
Alors, moi, je dis toujours, soyez militants, soyez actifs, puis poussez les idées, puis il ne faut pas lâcher. C'est le seul moyen de changer des choses.
I think change happens when you have hope. I think change happens when you have inspiration. And I think change happens when you have solidarity.